How significant is this moment, this realignment that we're seeing?
Well, it is a significant moment in many ways. First, President Biden was able to accomplish what he had hoped to. He had said right from the beginning in relation to his China policy that his goal was to coordinate with the allies, and that's what they've been doing. And coming out of the G7 meeting, perhaps it didn't go as far as the administration would have liked to see, and very firm commitments related to specifics on trade around China. They did agree that they would consult around non-market practices and did reach agreement on some very specific issues around Taiwan, Xinjiang, and human rights issues.
Do you expect it to change China's behavior in any material way?
Well, I think that it's not a big surprise to China that this has happened. What we have already begun seeing in China's behavior coming out of the Trump administration is a reassessment of their relationship with the United States, a pretty active engagement using its economic might with the European Union to work with specific countries. And I think that's one of the reasons that the president maybe wasn't able to go as far as he might have hoped in his agenda. Many of the European countries still are very reliant on trade with Europe, but we've also seen China really begin to engage actively in the Middle East and in Latin America, where their trade in those regions has increased significantly.
There seems to be, and it's no big surprise, obviously, here, Deborah, that sort of the underlying current here is that these are two economies. They're strategic rivals. They have separate and unique economic priorities. I guess if you put those realities together, do you think right now, there is still enough common ground, or less common ground, if you will, compared to, say, under Trump?
Well, it's as Secretary Raimondo said, the United States workers, American farmers have benefited tremendously from the Chinese market. And China is still going to remain an economic powerhouse for the foreseeable future. And so for American companies looking at China, many of them are even doubling down. So I do see that there is a commonality of interest. We're continuing to see a vibrant export trade. China was the largest source of direct foreign investment last year, overtaking the United States. And China is now the world's largest consumer market. And so for American companies, particularly coming out of the post-COVID recession, China still holds a lot of opportunity. What the hope is that we can encourage China to continue to play by the existing international trade rules. And we should be able to encourage China to continue to open its markets. President Xi said that he's going to do that. We have seen initial signs that that is continuing to happen as part of this dual circulation model that they talk about. Part of it is building out their domestic consumer market, which provides opportunities for foreign firms.
So what's keeping you busy? What's on the agenda for you in terms of your advice to obviously both companies on both sides of the Pacific here?
Well, I think for companies, one, it is obviously continuing to look at what the opportunities are in the Chinese market. And it really depends on the sector that you're in. If you're a technology company, it's going to be rough waters ahead. There's no question that this administration is continuing with the type of tough policy on technology that we saw under President Trump. They're just doing it in a quieter and more consistent way. A lot of the focus here in Washington will continue to be on domestic politics and how China can have an impact on that. So, for example, as the administration has a priority on the infrastructure bill and looking domestically, which is critically important to our own competitiveness, they are not going to take steps that might disrupt the balance on Capitol Hill and lose them votes if they're inadvertently upsetting people with steps that they're taking when it relates to China. For China, I think it's very important that they continue to seek areas where they can work with the United States and that they encourage and they continue to pursue this market opening. It's in their own interest to build up world-class companies and to be able to compete.
Deborah, briefly, you talk about areas of cooperation. One area that has been in a lot of lip service paid to, at least, is cooperation around climate change. I know this is an area of expertise for the Paulson Institute and you and your team there. What are we seeing materially, though? What changes are we seeing? What opportunities to actually cooperate when it comes to climate change? Just briefly.
Well, it's very interesting. So June 25th, China will launch its carbon exchange, for example. And when it launches, it'll bring almost 50% of China's carbon emissions under trading, but also 14 to 15% of global emissions, which is essentially the size of the U.S. emissions. It provides a huge opportunity for companies in carbon offsets. China is a huge market for climate technology, for commercializing these, which could be huge opportunities for the two countries to work together to bring down global emissions, but also could be a source of conflict if we start to fight and compete over climate technologies, as we've started to see in solar panels, in new energy vehicles, and lithium-ion batteries.